Hard of the city where the lights grow dim. Grit and grind, every inch, every rim. From the underdogs rising to the legends that win. Give us the grit, iron, report let the games begin.
All right, we are through the State of the Union for the Detroit Red Wings. We wanted to get at least one little segment in there for all the hockey heads out there, but we're right back to the bread and butter here. We're right back into football. We have a lot coming up over the next few weeks, really getting into football. We have just a little season player prop for the Detroit Lions guys, right?
Yeah, yes, sir, man. Lions over-under. I have 6 over-unders, all kind of a consensus of, your DraftKings and your FanDuel, your Vegas, whatever. So without further ado, man, first one, I think some of these lines are particularly juicy, by the way. Jared Goff passing yards. Tyler, over-under 4,099.5 passing yards for Jared Goff in 2026.
Okay, so just looking at some of his previous numbers, last year, passing yards, he had 4,564. The year before that, he had 4,629. The year before that, 4,575. So 3 straight years of 4,500 plus passing yards. The year before that, he finished just under at 4,438, so about 62 passing yards short. And then the year before that, first year in Detroit, he was back down to 3,200 and then staying around the 3,500s. So that was going back to the Rams days. So really, since this offense got humming outside of his first year here in Detroit, he has pretty much averaged a minimum of 4,500 plus. And going back to last year, we had half the season last year with Johnny Morton, who was not very good at his job, and that's the reason we let him go midway through the season, and Dan Campbell took back over. So even with half the season being terrible play calling, in which we were like, what is going on here? He still finished with 4,564 passing yards last year. I think that's a steep drop off, and I know he's obviously in his 32 age season, I think it is, to go from averaging 4,500 to then suddenly dropping down to 4,100. I think there'd have to be a pretty significant injury in there, significant games missed in order to drop down that much. And if he's been at nothing, he's been consistent and healthy in his tenure here in Detroit, knock on wood. So I'm gonna say over. I think he steps down from his 45-64 last year, but I don't think he drops all the way down to below 41.
It's interesting to see that Vegas has priced it at that 4,100. Just, yeah, considering what you just broke down, the body of work over the last 3 or 4 seasons, which has been fantastic for Jared Goff. I just did the quick math. That's basically 24 yards less per game that Jared would have to, get to that 4,100 instead of the 45, whatever that he's been hovering at. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm definitely over on that as well. Again, maybe they're pricing in a game missed or something, which if that happens, then probably all bets are off for the over there, but I'm over as well. Okay. Next one.
Let me just real quick. Because that would be 4,100 would be going back, not including his first season in the league at age just 22. He only played 7 games in which he finished with just over 1,000 yards. Not including that one, that would be his third worst season in his career. And like I said, the worst he's had in the last 6 or 7 years. At what age do you think a steep drop off like that for a quarterback would happen? I mean, he's again 32 years old. I feel like for that steep of a drop off, like you said, it's kind of interesting. Vegas had it that steep. I think he has at least another, I would say, 2 years before you would probably expect a drop off like that to go down to almost a career low.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it seems like these quarterbacks, they're aging like fine wine into their, early mid 30s, even seems like late 30s is just not really a problem for these guys.
Exactly.
They're just getting better and better. So factor that with, Jared Goff being probably the least mobile quarterback in the league. He's not really taking too many hits. If he is, it's because he's getting sacked, which obviously is going to happen, right? Hopefully less this year than last year. But yeah, and again, a 4,100 season is still solid. I mean, it's not that much of a drop off, but I don't know where Vegas is going there. I think just considering the weapons that we have, and, again, Gibbs in the backfield, which he's going to be running routes too. Yeah, I definitely see the over.
Okay. Yeah, I just had to fit that in to see where we think that would happen, because I agree with you. Quarterbacks nowadays, 32 is not young, but for a non-mobile quarterback, it's definitely not old. So I'm surprised it's that low. But okay, let's get to the next one.
Next one. Okay, so Amon-Ra St. Brown receptions over under 104.5. And just for perspective, last year, he had 117 grabs for 1,401 yards.
I'm doing the same process I just did with Jared, just because we've had a lot of turnover and a lot of changes with this offense over the last few years. We've seen the physical play calling be changed, but also a lot of personnel turnover. And similar to Jared, Amon-Ra is, and we've said this before, is just a very much a safety blanket. His numbers are very steady across all of those offensive changes and offensive struggles over the last few years. So you mentioned 117 receptions last year, 115 receptions the year before, 119 receptions the year before that. So that's back-to-back-to-back years of like pretty much on pace, exactly what he'd done the year before. That's 16 gains in 2024 or 2023, excuse me. And then obviously 17 in 2024 and 17 in 2025. I'm going to say over on that one too. I think he's just a safety blanket. And I can't take an under on a safety blanket. If it was, going to be looking at maybe a career high, like I don't see him putting up a 120-24 season, or something like that high. I think he's going to be right around his average for the last 3 years. And that's right around where that line is. And so being the safety blanket that he is, I'm going to say over.
Yeah, this is a guy who just, I think we mentioned it maybe last pod, but he takes care of his body. I mean, obviously injuries can happen, right? But it just seems like he's got that durability. His best season from a reception standpoint, 119 receptions in 16 games in 2023. So yeah. Again, Vegas is definitely pricing these guys, significantly lower than we've seen in the past 3 years. I am definitely going over 104.5 on St. Brown.
The one thing that is striking me from his numbers of the last few years, just looking at this, so you mentioned his best season, 2 years ago, when he had 119 catches for 1,515 yards, 15-15. He had a success rate that season of 61.6. Last year, his numbers dropped just a tiny bit, 115 receptions for 1,263 total yards. His success rate went up, though, to 70.2. The one that really stood out to me, and this was a theme for last year, you and I talked about it on a lot of episodes last year, and I think even we got in a little bit of trouble online for people not being happy that we were calling this out. Last year, he finished right in between both of those with 117 catches, like you mentioned, for essentially 1,400 yards. But his success rate dropped down, again, from 70.2 to 54.7, which is a tremendous drop-off. That was that was the worst of his entire career going back to 2021. And we mentioned he was having really uncharacteristic dropping issues last year that we had never really seen before from him. He famously stays around and catches out of the jugs every single game, every single practice, every single game. So that was an issue that we hadn't had issues with. And so if he even normalizes his success rate, I think it's easy. He's going to be right there on the 117 like it was last year. If he normalized his success rate and had his numbers last year at 60% even or something like that, he would have blown past 117 and probably would have been in the 120s, 125. So I think that's something to take into consideration too. Better play calling this year, similar to Jared Goff, and I hope he's going to have his uncharacteristic drop issues figured out that he had last year.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, moving on. Next one. Again, I do think this is a bit low. So yeah, maybe interesting that Vegas is just bearish on the Lions in general. But Jameson Williams receiving yards over under 924.5 for JMO in 2026. For context, last year, 1,117 receiving yards, and I think he was just over 1,000 the year before that, too, if memory serves.
Yep, so it was back-to-back season with 1,000 yards. He had 1,001 yards in 2024, and then you just mentioned 1,117. So this is a steep drop-off, again, to be back into the low 900s. Man, I don't want to say over on all these guys, but because, we had a really good offense 2 seasons ago, one of the best offenses in NFL history. And that kind of would just put us back to that if we do go over on these. I figured there would be some number in here about Jameson Williams. I saw this stat on Twitter that I thought was really interesting that would lead us to saying he's going to be right around the 1,000, whether he breaks 1,000, not sure, but right around there. So last year in weeks 1 to 7 under Johnny Morton, which we already talked about, he was a guy that hindered Jared Goff himself and just didn't really know how to utilize the tools we had. Jameson Williams had 17 catches for 289 yards. Again, this is weeks 1 through 7, so a good sample size. 17 catches, 289 yards, 2 touchdowns, with an average depth of target of 15.2 yards, which put him at about, fantasy-wise, wide receiver 42. Jameson Williams in weeks 9 through 18, so just the second half of the season, when Dan Campbell took over play calling, he had 48 catches, 828 yards, and 5 touchdowns, with an average depth of target of 11.5, putting him at wide receiver 5. So all that to say, we were begging for Johnny Mo to use Jameson Williams much more, and he just wasn't. Even though he was using him deeper, the average depth of target, even though it was much smaller sample size, 17 receptions to 48, was larger, 15.2 yards downfield when they were being targeted to just 11.5 when Dan Campbell was calling plays. Dan Campbell was calling his number and utilizing him much more similar to what we were seeing with Ben Johnson when he was really the weapon that he saw. And you don't, Dan Campbell's not making the play calls this season. We know that. But he's definitely going to be more involved than Johnny Morton, and it definitely can't be as bad as Johnny Morton was. And Petzing is known for a really great running game, but then they brought in, what was his name, Kafka from the Giants to act as kind of like a co-offensive coordinator, be specifically the passing game coordinator. And so I think it's similar to Amon-Ra St. Brown. We just said, like, if he even were just to eliminate his random drops that he had, his numbers would have been even crazier last year. Last year, if you eliminate the massive underusage of Jameson Williams for half the season, his numbers would have crushed his 1,117. So I see it maybe regressing a tiny bit, but I still see it hovering right around the 1,000. And so I'm going to take over on this as well.
It's tough, man, but I am going over. I think this is finally the season where we just see not only just a full season of Jameson Williams, but a full season of us being able to utilize him to his full potential. And I think he's going to be borderline unguardable. We've seen it in camp, and granted, it's just camp, but he is just cooking fools left and right. And again, our secondary, even our starters, are really nothing to write home about. Unfortunately, I just think it's going to be a big season for Jameson Williams. And again, there's a big if. Maybe Vegas is pricing in, a little bit of that risk of him missing games, either due to suspension or, obviously injury could happen to anyone. But I don't know if that's, a risk that they price in. Could be, but I see another 1,000-yard season for him. So yeah, 924.5. I'm smashing the over on that as well. So
yeah,
just a couple
we might have the best
more.
offense in the world because we're taking over on all these guys. But hey, we'll see.
Well, granted, this is the team that scored more points last season than almost any other, right? Like I don't think we were number one, but certainly we were flirting with top 5. I know 2024 season they were the number 1 offense. So yeah. This is a team that likes to move the ball, and especially a team that, on defense could struggle, and you got to be putting up points on offense to kind of keep up. Could be in a lot of track meets. I definitely like the overs there. So this is a tough one, maybe. For me, at least, this is probably the hardest one of the bunch. But our star running back who just got paid, Jahmyr Gibbs, rushing yards, over under 1,199.5. For context, last year, Gibbs 1,223 yards on 243 carries. So that's 23.5 yards less than his season last year.
You're right. This one is hardest because this is the most change, I think, out of, at least on the offense, these last few that we talked about, Jared Goff, Jameson Williams, like the receiving core didn't really change. We know who and what Amon-Ra St. Brown is. We know who and what Jameson Williams is when he gets utilized properly. Jared Goff, we definitely know who he is. Again, a question mark on the offensive line. But Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously, you lost David Montgomery. He last year, as you and I correctly pointed out, he was likely going into the season. We knew it was going to be less of a 1A, 1B, and be a 1 and 2, essentially, with David Montgomery, which it definitely was. But at the same time, his numbers, his yards still went down from 14-12 to 12-23 last year. And we had the difference in changing of guards with the play calling and the offensive coordinator. But again, as I just mentioned with Jameson Williams, Drew Petzing is supposedly is really great offense or running game coordinator, and to kind of offset that, they had to bring in someone else to make sure we're not just running the ball too much. And the offensive line has to be a little bit better than last year. But I'm not certain that it is, with Cade Mays going down, as we just discussed last week or 2 weeks ago. I don't know, dude. I'm truly stumped. You know why I'm so stumped? I'm so stumped because I want to say over, and but it's like one of those things where like you answer A 5 times in a row on a test, and you're like, and the next answer you're like, you actually think it's A, but you're like, well, there's no way it was A this many times in a row. And it's like when you're picking, overs on team overall schedule and wins and stuff like that. You can't pick everyone to win because someone has to lose. I got to take the over again.
It's got to be an over for me. And for me, it's because, again, assuming he's playing all 17 games, 250 attempts in 2024, 243 attempts in 2025. now you're the
He's
guy.
gonna hit
No more
300.
David Montgomery. Like, I think that his touches are probably going to be closer to, 265, 270 attempts this season. And so, like, again, if he stays on the field, he's a guy who's averaged basically 5 yards per carry in his career. Could be a little bit north of that, could be a little less, but either way, like, you do the math and that puts you well over 1,300 yards. So this is another one where it's, especially everything considered, on paper, the Lions have upgraded their offensive line. Granted, already dealing with injuries, sick, but yeah, it just looks like a spot where Jahmyr Gibbs is going over. I mean, this is going to be just a sensational season for him. So I am with you. I'm going over again. Let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. This is a defensive line that has actually gotten improved, and in the preseason, these guys have just been they've been stars. They've been doing everything. And so we're going to go Aiden Hutchinson, individual sacks, over under 13.5 in 2026. Last season, 14.5 for Hutch.
So he had 14.5. So again, man, the Lions they weren't very good last year. We know they were better than probably their record showed. I think in one score games 2 years ago, they were like 7-3, and last year they were 2-5. So like, we just didn't close out certain games. Like, we knew we were better than our record showed last year. But Vegas has us being a lot worse this upcoming year, just with his individual. Like, we didn't have that many guys going well above and beyond, unless Vegas thinks that these are the guys and their numbers were the reason we were even slightly good and won a few games, and so they're naturally going to regress, and everyone else maybe will be a little bit better, or they're just Vegas thinks we're going to naturally very much regress. Let's see, 14.5 sacks last year. He that's basically back-to-back years in which he was on track to put up a whole hell of a lot of sacks until he obviously went down with his injury in 2024. I'm going to take over. I think this defensive line has gotten a lot better, like you mentioned, and I think we've seen him do a lot more having all the attention. Now that's a heavy asterisk similar to Jahmyr Gibbs on like the offensive line. If the offensive line can't stay healthy and they are just absolute shit, then Jahmyr Gibbs' number is going to fall. Same thing's going to kind of apply with Aiden Hutchinson. If the help that we got him is not enough help and they can't perform, then I think he's going to be right around the like 12.5 area. But I'm going to take over.
And I'm with you on the over. And really just because we've had so many guys who look like they're blossoming right in front of our eyes, who will be playing alongside Hutch, maybe on that other end of the defensive side of the ball. So I just think that, at least I hope that Hutch is going to be maybe seeing a few less double teams this year, just knowing that we probably have some more options on the other defensive end position. And he's going to be a monster. He's going to get after the ball for sure in the quarterback. And I think 13.5 is a smash. I could see as high as, a 17 sack season. Like it's within his grasp. So yeah. Over on that. Last one for me, and I think we have been over on all of these. Again, call us just classic Lions homer fans, whatever, but I just feel like these lines are a little bit too juicy. So last one, Lions team wins over under 10.5 this season.
Yeah, so we're going to be getting into, let's see, next week we're going to be doing college football, Michigan State. The week after is the first start. It's going to be back to our real bread and butter with breaking down doing the previews for games. Obviously, we'll have no review because it's going to be week one. We won't have much to review, but we're going to use that time to do our expected most improved player, MVP, stuff like that. We're going to then obviously make our prediction, overall record, and stuff like that. So we'll do a little more in depth of like games and where we're going to end up in the division. Over under 10.5. I think the record or the schedule is just so easy because of the games that we lost last year without having it exactly in front of me and going line by line. I think we end up with 11. I think we end up with 11 wins. I'm going to take the over on it and complete the queen sweep on that and say over on absolutely everything. Call it the Detroit Lions homer parlay. Take over on everything.
Yeah, and hell, maybe we should do that. Maybe just for content for the people to maybe get rich. Yeah, just
real quick. I did that 2 years ago, and the only one and it was probably a 10 prop parlay. It was all overs for Lions. It was the Lions make the Super Bowl parlay. The only one that didn't hit of the 10 was Dan Campbell, Coach of the Year, and he got robbed of it. He should have won it, and he got robbed of it. And my parlay lost because he did not win Coach of the Year. So it can happen.
What was the payout on it? Is this like are we talking about like a $10
This was like a
bet that you
fiver.
threw down?
Yeah, like it was like a
$5?
fiver to bring home like 5-10 grand or something. Yeah, it was
Oh
nice.
my God, dude. I knew you threw that down. I didn't realize that the payout was actually that big on that. I think we should cook up something for the listeners, for ourselves. Yeah, maybe, I don't know if it hits, maybe we do something fun for or with the listeners. But I'm with you on this one. Lions team wins. Like, it's got to be over 10.5. The schedule is very easy. And granted, it's any given Sunday, and you really never know how any of these teams could pan out on year over year. A team that could be, a candy win, and that we're looking at in August could actually turn out to be a really hard game if they end up firing on all cylinders. So all that is to say, 11 wins, 12, 13, I think is still, it's definitely in the cards. So certainly higher than 10.5. I am with you. So yeah, that was Lions over under. Again, Tyler and I, just straight homers, going over on every single pick. There were a couple that were difficult. I think there were a couple that were easier. Again, it's all dependent on injuries at the end of the day and how the team performs. But yeah, hopefully that gets you a little bit fired up. The listeners, I should say, that football is right around the corner. We can taste it. It's already end of August. NFL's back.
NFL is absolutely back.
Yeah. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retire. Grit iron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on, blast beats thunder and loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The gridiron report where the stories are proud. Tune in, bring the heat, make your fandom avowed.